Good morning. So I hope you're doing well. Let's see here. Oh, come on. There it is. Looking for my whiteboard marker. Just like I would be in the classroom. No, that's a Sharpie. If I do this, everything is over. Where in the world is it? I did not eat it. There. No, that's a Sharpie too. Too many writing utensils. There it is. I see you. This is what happens when you try to fake an office at your kitchen table, dining room table. And everything piles up. What you cannot see is behind the computer, there is a massive stack of books. There are papers everywhere. There's an enormous amount of art supplies. It started out so organized, which is how I feel like that kind of applies to everybody's life right now, right? It started out so organized. So happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you are doing well on this gray and windy and rainy morning. I thought the power was going to go out on me a couple of times there, but I think it's stabilized now. It was kind of flickering a bit. I think we're supposed to get the really bad weather later on today, but I don't think it should interrupt this stream. So today is your last day of instruction for me in this week. So Honors World History. Excuse me. What you guys are going to be doing is we're transitioning over to Unit 9 now, which is one of my favorites, but it is a big, complicated unit. It involves us talking about the Age of Revolutions, everything from the American, French, Haitian, which I love the Haitian Revolution, man. That's a trip. And the Latin American revolutions. And then we talk about industrialization. And then we talk about imperialism all together, because we start the unit in about 1750 and we end it at the 20th century. So we are getting there. So what you guys are going to be doing today, because you've done a heck of a lot of work for me this week, and I do appreciate it, is you guys are going to be watching a documentary that kind of bridges that gap between the Enlightenment and sets us up for the American Revolution on Monday. So it's a Mankind documentary. It's the same ones that we've been watching all semester. I actually very much like this this particular episode. It doesn't have the creepy military guys in it who like get super excited about blowing things up. Excuse me. Instead, this one really talks a lot about exploration and science and all sorts of cool stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. It's a little bit longer than half an hour. It's like 44 minutes. So I know that's technically over the allowance for you guys in terms of your obligations. But it is a good episode. You could probably, if you have the ability to like cast it or watch YouTube videos on your TV, do that. Have everybody sit down in your family and watch it for 44 minutes. There's awesome stuff in there. Excuse me. So yeah, you guys have your intro to Unit 9 documentary, and there's some video questions that go along with it. And then AP Comparative Government and Politics, people. You guys have a summative assessment. I know that's everybody's favorite. So you guys have your argument FRQ over really it's obviously it's comparative, but I am requiring that you use Mexico for at least one of your specific pieces of evidence on this. So that's run through the My AP portal. It should not require a lockdown browser. I've set it so that it doesn't. It should, I hope, have a timer that pops up for you, or at least let you know how long you have. I can't see what it looks like for you guys, which is one of the big flaws of their platform right now. So you got to let me know if there's funky stuff about it, okay? Because I have no idea what it looks like from your end. But if you log on, you're looking for the Unit 6 assessment and click it, and it is a single argument FRQ, and you are timed at 35 minutes. Now, the previous one, we timed it, or I suggested that you time it at 45 minutes because before they redid the AP exam for this year, it was 45 minutes for the argument FRQ. But these are not usual times. And so because they want the whole exam to be something that you can do in under an hour, the argument FRQ you will do on the day of the AP exam will be 25 minutes. So I'm trying to bridge the gap. I'm trying to kind of like whittle it down so that you started at 45 minutes and now we're going to go 35 and then we're going to practice more until we get it down to 25 minutes on a regular basis. Okay. So that's what you have to do for me today. I am checking through AP Classroom right now just to kind of see if anybody's started, and it doesn't appear that anybody has, which is a bit unusual for you guys. Usually you're pretty Johnny on the spot about getting stuff done for me, but I'm wondering if that is just because it is a summative, because it is going to weigh as a test, and because you just kind of wanted to get a sense of how it was going to work before you actually submitted anything. Okay, because I'm not seeing any questions from you popping in on Remind, which is usually my indication that things have gone awry, is when all of the sudden the reminds go crazy, but I'm not seeing that. So that is good news. But yeah, I'm not seeing any of you having started it. That's a lot of you to jump on there eventually. So, who is out there this morning? Say hi in the chat so I'm not alone. I hope you are having a good week in general. Tomorrow, remember, is sort of catch-up Friday, so you don't have any new instruction from me. I'm trying to decide how I want to do that, man, because usually I get to talk about narco trafficking and a lot more about like a lot more about cartels when we talk about Mexico, because it pairs really well when we talk about political violence. But I had to cut it down this time because it's not going to be on the exam in the same sort of way. So I pretty much cut that out. And I feel really bad about that because it's an interesting topic and it's something that I enjoy teaching. So I don't know. I might put a link or maybe put the rest of my notes up on the blog either tomorrow or over the weekend, just as kind of an enrichment thing, but it won't have an assignment associated with it. I don't know, man. I just kind of I wish that I were able to sort of give you the proper send off with regards to Mexico. I feel like there are very good reasons why I build the class the way I do, so that we do Nigeria, Mexico, Iran, because I think their political systems are really complex. Their governmental systems are pretty complex. They have a lot of bearing on the developing world, and I don't want us to jump into analyzing them until we have the toolbox ready to do so. So I hold off on teaching those units until the end of the semester. And also because they tend to be really interesting to students and they kind of hold your attention through the end of the year. But unfortunately, the way it shakes out now is that those 3 units, all of which are developing nations, all of which are mostly non-white nations, are ones that you're having to study on your own, which means that inadvertently I've given you, I mean, I'm hoping that my online instruction is helpful and thorough, but I know it's not the same as being in class, right? So what does that mean? Well, it means that inadvertently the way that I've structured the class, even though it had the best of intentions, has given an undue amount of weight to more developed nations, more economically advanced nations than developing ones. And there are a lot of problems that go along with things like that. Yeah, so I am not entirely thrilled with the way that this has happened. Okay, hang on. Yeah. So at any rate, it is what it is. I can't undo it. I can't put the time back. So I just got to hope that this works out for you guys. So is it because everyone in the world is sleepy that there's no one talking to me right now? Or what? Hmm. Just checking to make sure the videos are posted properly. All of that. Okay. Well, until some of you guys decide to show up and you have some questions for me, then what I'm probably going to do is do a little bit of drawing. Because that is kind of how I am processing stuff right now. Art is good for that. I've been thinking over the past 6 weeks, however long it has been, about how glad I am that I have some hobbies that make me feel productive, that do things, right? Where I can point to something and say, I did that. Not that things like video games don't also have that component to it. I'm not slamming on that sort of thing, or reading a book or something like that. But artistic expression is always something where I feel a lot better at the end of it, because I can say, oh, that's the thing I did today. I made that thing. And I think sometimes that's really important for keeping us in kind of a good place mentally. We got new people. So how are we doing today, guys? Good morning. Good morning. Or we had a new person, maybe, possibly, who knows? I am, however, looking for drawing prompts. So if you are feeling inspired, let me know. I have moved on to, I'm working through, like, I only have so much drawing paper. Hey, guten Morgen, Chandler. I only have so much drawing paper, so I have moved on to a set of envelopes for that are a weird size, like they're enormous. And I have no purpose for them. So I'm like, you know what? They're now drawing paper. That's what they are. That is where we are. So the Mayan period, the pyramids in Chiapas. Oh, you want me to draw that? Heck yeah. I will do that, man. I am there for Chiapas. I desperately want to go back. So someday, when there is freedom of movement again, I will go back. Yeah. Let me find a reference photo, because, yeah. So I downloaded a new keyboard onto my phone, just because I like to play around with stuff like that and see which ones are more efficient and everything. This ain't it, Chief. It's I'm not a fan. I'm gonna have to get rid of this one. I was hoping this one might be a little bit more effective when I like flip-flop back and forth between English and Spanish. And it might be better for that, but it is not real great for just being able to I like that one. Yeah, but it's just not really great for just being able to see things. All right, we'll go Palenque. Yeah, Palenque is beautiful. And then I might have to draw some of the tooth comb details. Those are some of my favorites. I love Mesoamerican art so much. I think it's so cool because like the differences in terms of the way that people, in terms of the way that people organize images, I think is really interesting. That's one of the things that I love most about teaching art history when I get a chance to, is the different sort of languages people come up with for images, what they mean, and um, how people structure them, right? Because not all images can be read in the same way, right? So it's like if you have no background in, say, Christianity, okay? If you have no background at all in Christianity, then reading an image in Western European art becomes incredibly complicated. Yeah. One of the things that I always found kind of not surprising. It wasn't a surprise to me. It was more just kind of an acknowledgement that I had to do it. One of the things that I always found interesting when I taught art history was just how much iconography I needed to go over with regards to Western art that I always kind of assumed was a little bit more well known, but I learned pretty quickly that those assumptions are really culturally based, and I need to be more careful about that sort of stuff. So um, so one of the things that I always do when I teach art history is I spend at least a day before we get into like Western European art, going through Christian iconography and symbolism and like what various symbols mean in Christianity. Like whenever you see a lamb, that equals this, and how do you translate those images, and what is the symbolism of, like, why are there so many pelicans in Catholic art? Turns out that there's a medieval sort of Catholic story about that kind of misunderstood how pelicans worked. It basically there was this mythology that pelicans fed their young by taking their beak and piercing their own breast when they were starving and feeding their young their blood. And so if you go to like Catholic churches, sometimes you'll see iconography of pelicans in the architecture. And if you don't know that, then you're like, why the heck is there a pelican? Like, what is the pelican doing there? Um, yeah, yeah, you have to learn how to look for those things for real. I have a bit of an advantage in terms of that sort of stuff, because my grandfather, great grandfather, I guess, my great grandfather was a master carpenter and a woodworker, and he did all the woodwork on the Lusitania and Mauritania actually when he was a young man in Glasgow. But his profession when he came to the States was doing woodwork in cathedrals. And he did a huge amount of cathedrals and other churches and temples and synagogues and all sorts of stuff. Just basically religious architecture was his thing. And he did it all through the 20s and 30s and 40s. And it's incredibly beautiful stuff. And so my dad has kind of gotten into trying to track it down so that we can get his name attached to it and make sure that there's some historical documentation of that sort of stuff, because that sort of work tends to not be attributed to individuals. Artisan work tends to kind of go undocumented for various reasons. I mean, try to find the individual names of the people who did the stonemasonry on Notre Dame, right? Like, it's really hard to find that sort of stuff. So at any rate, yeah, dad and my mother have been kind of working on this as a side project and everything. And I and so to kind of help them, I'll go through and like analyze things for them. My Actually, I'll tell you, my art history stuff has come in handy a couple of times, where I've been able to kind of point out like why things are the way they are, in that sort of stuff. But at any rate, yeah, they that I just find it really fascinating, sort of the visual language you have to know in order to be able to understand or at least interpret art or architecture in different cultures. Because what means one thing in one part of the world means something radically different in another, you know? So whenever I do Mesoamerican art, you have to kind of start, all right, let's talk about cosmology and like how these people viewed the world. And let me explain to you why, like, okay, the snake is not a bad thing. Let's back it up and talk about this. So oh. So Carson and Carson isn't here, but Chandler. So, what was difficult for you in terms of figuring out the references in Western art? Like, what was the confusing stuff? Because you're right, there is a lot of stuff, and it can be really confusing. I think one of the most fun things I've ever done with you guys on a trip several years ago when we went to Spain and we went to Paris. And we uh, in Madrid, we went to the Prado, which is one of my favorite museums in the world because it has a lot of sort of Spanish masterworks, which would make sense, right? Because it's a Spanish museum. But it also, I mean, it has those Spanish masterworks and a lot of Dutch and Spanish Netherlands sort of work from the Renaissance and post Renaissance. A lot of the body positions and then the background details like skulls and clocks and mirrors. Ah, memento mori, memento mori. Remember, you shall also die, right? It's all about a reminder of death. Yeah. But one of my favorite things was taking kids through the Goya section because I adore Goya. I think he is so messed up and brilliant because of it, frankly. But he is deeply disturbed. And they had one of my very favorite works of all time there, Dog Swimming in the Sea. Which, do you know that one, Chandler? Hang on. Goya, Dog Swimming. They were part of, here it is. It's dog, the drowning dog is what the Prado calls it. But if you I- if you don't know, Goya was largely an engraver. He did a lot of engravings, especially like the horrors of war, um, about the Napoleonic campaign in Spain. It's almost like I always point out that it's like quasi photojournalism is essentially what it was. It's not, it's not, oh, I love Goya, man. Goya's in your AP Art History collection, dude. You should know Goya. But he he has this the series of engravings, right, of the atrocities carried out by French and also by Spanish soldiers during the course of the war, and it's really blatant. It depicts things like rape and hangings and all sorts of terrible stuff, and he doesn't romanticize it, right? He's doing this, and like he does it after the war is over, but he's drawing from things he actually saw, and a lot of them are historically, like we can find supporting documents of the things that he's depicting, and he he's clearly like messed up by it, and then later in his life he kind of went into seclusion. He had been a court painter. Like he had done most of the portraiture for the Spanish royal family for years and years and years. He had been this like, preeminent court painter. And then he kind of starts retreating inside of his house after the Napoleonic Wars, and he does these series of murals on the walls of his home. And people didn't even know they were there until after he died, because he like basically turned into a hermit and didn't invite people in. And they're often referred to as the dark paintings because they're horrific. It's like you see what he's seeing inside his head on the walls of his house, and they're masterworks. They're astounding, but they were painted directly onto the plaster of the walls, and so eventually people were like, "Well, they're falling into disrepair inside this house. What are we going to do with them?" And they had to figure out like how do we get the paintings off of the walls and safely into a place where we can climate control them and make sure that they're okay. So this one is one of my favorites. This is The Drowning Dog. And it's this weird yellowish wash, yellow-brown wash. And at the very bottom of the image, there is this dog, the head of a dog. And he's like partially submerged in something, or maybe swimming. It's hard to tell, but it is this weird image. I mean, you got to remember, this is like being painted at the beginning of the 19th century. Like, what is this, surrealism? This is insane. Yeah, it's he's that one is maybe one of, I find it more psychically sort of disturbing than some of the other dark paintings, like here, Goya. The more famous one is Saturn devouring his son, which is really brutal. I will throw a link to it here. Yeah, there you go. Isn't it? I mean, like, it's terrifying, Chandler. I don't know why that scares me so much. This right here is also Goya. That one's more bloody and gross. And that was in, where was that one painted? I can't remember. Um, that was inside his home. It was painted. Where was this one painted? Oh, I'm not sure. It was on the first floor of his home, but I'm not sure what room it was in. So like he painted these on the wall. The Black Duchess, yeah, that one's beautiful. I mean, weird, but yeah. I love Goya. I think he's astounding. I think he's incredibly modern for the time he was in, and really contemporary, and clearly haunted. Yeah, Goya is one of those things. But like when we tour, when we had time in the Prado and everything, I had a group of kids who didn't know much about art, and I kept telling them, I was like, you guys can just go off and explore on your own. And they were like, yeah, but we don't know what any of this means. So I wound up giving them like, I was like, all right, okay, well, I'm just gonna kind of like wander. And full disclosure, man, I tend to take my time in museums. Like, I find a room I like, and then I sit down and kind of like, sounds really weird, like absorb the vibes, kind of get a sense of the room itself and everything. I like museums; they are my happy place. And so I had this group of like 6 or 7 kids. They were following me around like ducklings, and we'd get to stuff and they'd be like, I don't get this one. I'd give like an impromptu like art lecture on it. Oh man, we stopped in front of Las Meninas because it was there and it was so great. I was so excited. It was like, let me tell you why this is such a great painting. There was a docent who clearly spoke English, kind of in the same room, and she was laughing at me because I was super excited. What's your favorite work of the 250? Well, it's really 403 if you consider all of the various floor plans, etc. Honestly, didn't expect to like Madrid quite as much as I did. I'd go back in a heartbeat just because the Prado was so astoundingly great. That, and it would be very nice to travel without students because there was stuff I could not do because there were students with me. Not that I don't like traveling with you guys. I'm very fortunate to get to do that. Hey, Chandler, if you're still hanging around, can you at least give me a heads up? Are you able to log into AP Classroom? Have you started working on your assessment or no? Someone has. Let's see here. Miko. Okay, good. Rebellious Silence? Ooh, that one's a good one. You know what? I was visiting my sister. Well, no, actually, you know what? It was the first year I taught this course, and my family was planning on going up to New York for Thanksgiving that year for various and sundry reasons. And so it didn't make sense for me to go. This was when we drove up instead of flying. So it didn't make sense for me to drive back from Atlanta from DC and then get back in a car and drive directly back to DC, pick up my sister, and then keep going to New York. So instead, what happened on the trip was I went with everybody up to the trip. We did the trip as normally, and then everybody loaded the buses to go home, and I stayed. And we had a couple of days before we needed to head up to New York. So I kind of hung with my sister. I stayed on her couch for a couple of days, and while she went to work, I went and hit up all the museums at my own pace, which is usually glacially slow. And because like I said, museums are my happy place. And I like to spend a lot of time there. And I went to the Hirshhorn, which I think I've told you guys is probably my favorite museum in DC. I love it because I love modern and weird contemporary art. And there was a Shireen Nishat exhibit there right then. I had no idea. It was astounding. I think it was called The House is on Fire. It was just, they didn't have Rebellious Silence, but they had some of that same collection. They had these fantastic portraits of Iranian citizens with either passages from the Shahnameh inked. I guess it's I wanted to say inked, but they're written, but it's also calligraphic in ancient Persian or ancient 17th century, 16th century Persian, all over their skin like tattoos, or the illuminated manuscript images. She recreates them like tattoos on their bodies, kind of like grounding them sort of in their Persian heritage. It's just, and they're so big. Like they're just so big, and they're these gorgeous silver nitrate prints, which gives you this incredible level of detail and everything. I think I spent about 2.5 hours in that one exhibit. I don't think I saw anything else in the museum because it was so good. It was fantastic. It also had, she also had some visual, audio visual work. I won't say film, it really wasn't. It was really interesting, though, very, very atmospheric. So good. She's given a TED Talk, too. I haven't watched it. I keep meaning to. Liberty Leading the People is a good classic one. That one's one of my favorite for tableaux vivants, where I would have students be assigned that painting, and then you have to recreate it in real time. You have 20 minutes, use anything around the classroom, you've got to recreate that painting. The rule, of course, is that you need to stay dressed because Liberty ain't, but that one's always fun. I love her work. I just think it's so cool. Her stuff is, that's eerie. And sculpturally, I find it really effective. I just, oh gosh, I adore it. I think her stuff is astoundingly good. It's creepy as heck, though, in a really great way. Sometimes art should make you deeply uncomfortable. Hers does. Okay. It's the basic shape. Now we detail. big. Like, Chandler, the pen collection has gotten seriously out of control here. This is what happens. I go to art supply stores and I can't help myself. I just keep buying more. It's a problem. But there are some that are better than others for various tasks. Yeah, these are art pens. My regular pens are just as bad, but these are art pens. I'm so terrible about it. It's really bad. I keep thinking I need to be more responsible and not just keep buying pens because I like them. I need to buy pens only when I need them. And then what do? I buy pens. It's a problem. Half the time it's because like I have bought the same set of drawing pencils at least 4 times. At least 4 times. And I've done it because I've been out and then desperately wanted to drive. Oh, I like Cockney. Yeah. I wanted to drive. I've been out and then I wanted to draw. Oh no. Is this one busted? No. That one's dead. But I've, been out somewhere and then wanted to draw. And I've been like, well, now I'm in trouble. I don't have any drawing pencils. So then I know where I need to go to get some. So then I go and buy them. And then all of a sudden you have a whole drawer full of drawing pencils. It becomes a problem, or pens. I do not recommend it. That one's better. I'm similarly bad with actual writing utensils. You're like, this is one of my favorite types of pen. This one's hard for me to find anymore. I used to be able to find it at a particular bookstore, but I can't find it anymore. These are great because it is a fountain pen. Ooh. It's really great ink flow, and I love it. And you can get them in lots of colors. This one's purple. I prefer the blue, but they're really great. The problem is that they're, I wish they were refillable, but they're not. They're Pilot, which is, it's kind of like they're disposable fountain pens. I wish they weren't. I wish they were reusable, but they're pretty great. But I pretty much don't do drawings in color. I will either do color work from the beginning or just not do color work at all. I don't particularly add stuff in later. It's not a thing I really do. Nope. There we go. How small do I have? I need smaller. There we go. So have you been watching any new movies, kid, since we last spoke? You've been on a bit of a movie break? Yeah, you can't binge too many. Because then if you do, you lose the ability to really appreciate the individual sort of notions in each one's. What have you been doing instead? Después de Sueño no Trumbado. Some movies are like that, right? Where they're so transformative. Yeah. I've been watching, I don't know if you've been around while I was talking about it yesterday, but I've been watching, oh gosh, what is I feel like it's called like Morocco Love in a Time of War. It's on Netflix. It's a telenovela. But it's what should we call it? Um I think it's like Crónica de una Guerra or something like that in Spanish. I can't remember what the actual title to it was. Um, at any rate, it's about very rich women who volunteer as nurses during Spain's war. Uh, it's an imperialistic war in Morocco in the 1920s. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like, on the one hand, it does exactly what I want a telenovela to do. It is overblown and soapy as heck, which is deeply enjoyable. And there are lots of pretty people. And it actually has some of the same cast. If you know Gran Hotel, it has some of the same cast in that. Oh, very nice. Gonna have to know what your readings you are doing. Um, but like, I'm enjoying it, sort of, because I feel like it's trying to be way too apolitical about something that was essentially a war by Spain to hold on to territory by that belonged to other people. And I feel like it's trying to not deal with the Orientalism that is so clearly present in the material. And that's bugging me about it. And I wish that it were being a little bit more engaged on that sort of thing, because it is entirely possible to write like romantic, overblown, sort of soapy stuff, and also to have a conscience. Um, there are people out there who do that sort of thing and do it really well, um, and that bothers me. Like, there's a lot of white savior narrative in it. So I might have to give it up, which is a bummer because in a lot of ways, it's one of the better telenovelas I've watched in a while. Because I know guys keep saying like Elite, and I watched like half an hour of the first one. I really prefer, I like historical dramas in my telenovelas. I'm not particularly, dude, the real world is already tough enough. I want some escapism. I mean, like, at least historically. I don't necessarily want to think about the present. So you've been reading a lot about revolutions and the ideologies that moved masses and different ideologies that brought them down. Okay. What revolutions in general have you been reading about? Barcelona, Russian Rev, first Cuban Rev. Okay, all right. So give me the date that you're referring to with regards to the first Cuban Rev, because I got feelings about Cuba, man. That's another one I've studied a fair bit. I mean, what are you talking about? You're not talking about the War for Independence, yeah? Argentina. Argentina is a different world altogether. I actually don't know a whole lot about the actual mechanisms of the revolution in revolts in Argentina. I know it sounds really weird. I know an awful lot about work organizing in meat packing plants in Argentina. I had to one of my grad seminars used a text that kind of focused on workers' organizations through meatpacking plants, and so that is what I know about. Ah, okay, Céspedes. Yeah, Céspedes. Yeah, yeah. Actually, when I was in Cuba, our hotel in Viejo Havana was, oh gosh, it was right next door to Parque Céspedes. Yeah, yeah. The War for Independence is a trip and a half, man. Oh gosh, what was that wonderful book? I will think of it. I probably have it on my bookshelf, but it's probably buried under stuff right now. Um, there was a wonderful book on the wars for Cuban independence that I just lived and died by while I was studying it. I had this amazing history professor for Cuban history. He was just astounding. I would have taken all the classes in the world with him, but he was only hired my like third year of college, and of undergrad, and he traveled with us to. He was Puerto Rican, and he traveled with us to Cuba as one of our professors, and then we also worked with professors at La Universidad de Havana, um, and gosh, he was amazing. Um, while we were there, we were studying the history of Cuban religions, which is awesome. So cool. I That just made my little anthropological heart super happy, um, because we actually through the program had these really wonderful connections to religious communities in Cuba, and we got to go and like watch a toque de santo, which is like it's a ceremony in Santeria. Um, which was insane. It was so cool. It was so awesome. I was so glad I got to go. But yeah, that professor was great. And we read this wonderful book about, because I took his Cuban history class when we came back, because I was like, I will take anything you offer. History of paint drying, I will take that class. Like, he was so great. Like, have you ever watched Dead Poets Society, Chandler? It can be a rough one for people to watch because it deals with issues of suicide. So I'm always cautious when I recommend it. It's an astoundingly great film, but it rips me apart every time I watch it. Um, so I can't watch it all that often. You've seen it, okay? So that particular professor is the only professor I've ever done this for, but we captained my captain him at the end of our study abroad. He left the room because they have to leave the room before you do your teacher evaluations in college, and probably now they do it online. I don't know. Maybe they don't, but then you actually had to fill out like an actual survey and everything. And we were like, when he comes back in after, oh gosh, yeah, with Robin Williams, yeah. Um, when he comes back in, guys, like we were talking about how much we enjoyed the class. And we were like, when he comes back in, guys, we need to, oh, captain him. And we were all like, yeah, he was so great. So when he came back in, we all stand up on our desks and go, oh, captain, my captain. And he just gives us this blank look. He's Puerto Rican. He's never seen the movie. Like, just watch it. Just trust us. We're trying to give you the biggest compliment we can possibly give you. He was so wonderful. Yeah. But at any rate, he gave me a fantastic reading list that I just kind of lived and died by about Cuban history. And I'll find the title about sort of the Cuban Revolution for you, because it really gets into kind of the notion of the effect that race played on revolution in Cuba and how uncomfortable white Cubans were with a truly sort of radical revolution. And really gets into kind of like what Jose Marti does to notions of race in Cuba, because rather famously he talks about no hay raza en Cuba. There's no race in Cuba, which it's astoundingly interesting. Please go on. Not entirely sure I believe that. But yeah, no hay raza en Cuba. Because everybody who fought and died in the wars for independence had mixed their blood. And thus but not through like relationships or intermarriage or anything like that, because they had mixed their blood through this sort of like uber masculine, non-sexual sort of interaction. We can get into that later, but maybe not while I'm on camera here. That somehow that created sort of this, that somehow this created a new national identity. Essentially, it's sort of like the Cuban version of mestizaje. Hang on a second here. Okay. Okay. Sorry, somebody had a problem with their assessment. I was trying to see if I could fix it for them. Okay, give me a second. I may need to. Okay. All right, give me a moment here. I've got to do some tech work. It's always my favorite, and yours too, I am sure. Has everyone gotten really good at tech fixing right now? Oops, that's not what I meant to do. She's not in that class. No, she is in that class. Whoops, go back. Hmm. Let's see here. Okay. Okay. Yay, I fixed it. That's so exciting. Technology, man. I have no idea if it is the problem or the solution, but it's all we got right now. So might as well just kind of lean into it, yeah? Uh, on the one hand, I am eternally grateful that we have options, right? That we can do things and talk to each other from a distance. On the other hand, I had not anticipated being tech help for my entire family and all of my students. I'll tell you, it turns into an adventure anytime I try to do something new or different. I tried to explain to my aunts recently because I've been trying to set it up so that my parents can video chat with like their siblings and everything. So trying to set it up so we can do like Zooms as a family and things like that. And so most of my aunts and uncles are, you know, in their 60s or 70s. Um, just trying to explain how things work is a little complicated sometimes, but at least it's an option, you know? Could be worse. And we finally got the last of my dad's siblings um, on chat, so that made them all very happy to be able to see each other. So it was worth it. It was just an awful lot of, okay, look in your upper right hand corner of the screen. You should see X. You don't see it? Have you turned off your pop-up blocker like I told you to do? Do you know what a pop-up blocker is? Okay. All right. So, what browser are you using? No, Google isn't a browser. So now we go back and we add in foliage because Palenque está en la selva. Oops. So, after you finish your assessment for me, what are your plans for the day? Gonna cook anything really good for dinner tonight? Do you have any plans to make anything? Do you have catch-up work you have to do in other classes? Okay. Something a little bit more Really need to organize these. This is ridiculous. Make that darker. Okay. Good morning, Catalina. Did you have any trouble with the platform? Did it work okay for you? I am trying to collect data now so that we can give them some feedback and everything so that when I have my webinar next week, I can let them know if you guys are having any trouble so far. Or is it working fairly well for you? About halfway through it kicked you out? You're the second person I've heard that from. Were you able to rejoin though? Or did you just do it? I'm wondering if maybe it was a server problem on their end. Or maybe if it had something to do with storms. Could have. Yeah. But you got back in and finished it? Okay, good. I'm glad. This is the problem. Like, I can't see what you see, like, at all. It does not let me look at what it looks like for you. I have no idea what your platform looks like. I have no idea. I'd never understand that about UIs that they design for educational software. This is not the only time I've had this problem. Like last year, they moved a lot of our textbooks. You guys know this. They moved a lot of our textbooks to online versions, which I have many thoughts about equity and access, about that sort of stuff. But maybe this is going to change some people's minds on that sort of stuff, about our obligations if we're going to do that sort of thing. But at any rate, the teacher version of those textbook things don't look at all like what yours do, at all. And there's no way for us to see what you see at all. There's no way for us to like log on to a dummy student account. So when I'm telling you how to navigate places on the textbook or whatever, I'm telling you to do it the way I see it and the way I can do it, but that's not at all how it works for you either. Yeah, you know what? It might be the storms in terms of causing some of those problems. I know the wind has been really, really heavy. And for me, for a while there, I thought I was going to lose power. Not because the storm was so bad, but because the wind was just really picking up. And yeah, I know we're supposed to get worse waves of storms later. But yeah, I was concerned for a bit there that I was going to lose some power. And then how would I talk to you? It's a problem. So Catalina, today Chandler has requested that I draw Mayan ruins in Chiapas. So that is what I am drawing. I don't think I've given him a progress shot of it yet, though. It's slowly coming along. Maybe. The jungle bit is more complicated to draw in the back. It's a lot of scribbles. This is what I got so far. Okay-ish. Not fantastic. I have done better work. You're so... oh, yeah, they're kind of astounding. But I'm sure you will one day. Yeah? I'm sure you will one day. Might just be a while. Thank you. Did I ever show you what the finished plant drawing looked like? I can't remember if you were here for that. That's what yesterday when you asked me to draw my plants, there you go. That's what wound up. You did. Okay. Yeah. It was an appropriate drawing for Earth Day. Did you do anything fun outside yesterday? It was so beautiful. It was a great day for Earth Day. Did you do anything fun outside yesterday? Yes, today is maybe not so beautiful. I am thinking maybe I will not go on a walk this afternoon. Not if the storms are supposed to be as bad as they think. You did not. You stayed inside and played Catalina. Played Minecraft. Well, it rains in Minecraft sometimes too. What are you building in Minecraft? And are you playing with anybody else or playing alone? Mini games? Bed Wars? Nice. Minecraft wars can get really vicious. People get very, very into their constructions and then do not like it when you mess with them. I tend to be, yeah, I tend to be sort of just a passive, let me build everything in the world sort of person. Not so much about like going on campaigns or playing games or anything within the system. I just like building. You're really bad at PvP. Me too, kid. I am not a like I do not do uh like FPSs or anything like that. I'm just no. Like just let me build stuff. That's what I like to do. Like video games that are passive sort of things. Like this past weekend, I probably very foolishly, like let's be real, this was probably a poor choice. I reinstalled Stardew Valley. That thing is going to eat my time. Anything where I can just like go through enormous, like let me grow all of the plants, and I am missing this particular I'm missing this particular recipe, and oh no, what am I going to do? It's going to be fall, and I don't have enough in the way of a feed starter for my chickens. Like this is what happens. Well, I'm glad that I haven't been swamped. I was concerned today that I was going to get swamped with my AP isn't letting me do X, but it appears to be functioning okay-ish for you guys. So that's good. That does make me feel a little better. Or if it is acting up, like you indicated, that you guys are able to solve the problems, which is really important. But I think part of that is because you guys have just gotten better at that since everything started. Because the first couple of days, man, you guys were wearing me out with tech problems, which is not your fault. I kind of expected it. but you guys have kind of settled in, and I appreciate it. Well, it is now noon, guys. So I am going to let you guys go. I hope you have a wonderful day. I won't see you tomorrow for office hours, but I might jump into Magnet Tea Time today and tomorrow. So feel free to join me there. I hope you have a good weekend. Get some good rest. Write well. And I will see you when I see you. And here's today's drawing. There we go. All done. See you later.